worked. I think, fingers crossed, that things might be working. Hello, what it do? How's it going, everyone? It's hot out here today, but kind of felt doing a home or a phone stream, an old school phone stream for a little while, just to kind of see how these still feel. I did like your drawing. If you're the drawing that I'm thinking about. Hello, 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 hello. Good evening, good afternoon. On the classic set where the trees at. That's right, the trees. We have trees. You guys are looking at kind of the bar that holds my phone a little better than the trees, but you get the drift. You get the drift. Hi, Mr. Ego. What are we learning today? Well, I'm gonna wait for more people to get in here, and then I'm gonna give you guys a little spiel. Let's see what you think about it. Just a little spiel. How big's the backyard? I mean, I don't really have a backyard to speak of. I live in an apartment complex that used to be an old golf course. So there's a lot of open spaces, but no backyard, so to speak. When I was live on DFF, my chats were muted, which confused me considering I was never live, and I'm not muted on yours or TJ's channel app. I don't know what to tell you, buddy. You pissed off a mod, or YouTube's filter was catching whatever it was you were trying to say, which happens a lot. Top chat is only shit that YouTube's algorithm has determined isn't spam and shit. So if you were doing something like that, or I don't know, it just depends, but whatever. I can try and look into it for you some other time. Right now I can't. Beard is looking big pretty much every day. Hello, Ricklin Manchez. Should you get Vosh on for an episode of Flash Fried? Maybe. I mean, maybe so. Both of us have, like TJ and I have both now appeared on Vosh's show, and while he has said that he would be open to having either or both of us back in the future, you want to give it a little time to marinate. And to be honest with you, I need a little time to marinate on that discussion before I'm really ready to tackle another kind of discussion with Vosh. One of the corners I kind of got backed into in that discussion, and I feel I did a really poor job of defending myself in, and I think it caused me to lose a lot of goodwill with his audience in terms of my argument, and probably with my own audience too, because it's the most uncomfortable part of my ideology, and Vosh is very smart, and so he zeroed in on it very quickly. The most uncomfortable part of my ideological position is what's the process. Okay, so you guys know what I stand for. You guys know I stand for a post-scarcity, post-capitalist world where people's basic needs are taken care of despite their economic status. In fact, I'm for the elimination of economic status. It's a beautiful dream. I think Vosh shares it. But he's got this kind of idea for how we get from this to that. And I really wasn't able to present a cogent idea that countered it. And I think one of the problems is that I was looking for an idea that countered it. We got caught up in this Biden, riding with Biden discussion, which I didn't really want to have. I was fine to discuss it, but I was really kind of hoping that most of the talk that I would have with Vosh wouldn't be about this riding with Biden thing. But that's his big thing now, and so I was aware I was going to have to discuss it, and maybe wasn't really well prepped because I didn't really have a concrete line yet between where we are now and this kind of future society. I didn't have a plan. And Vosh had a plan. Vosh's plan was incremental change through electoral participation, lesser of two evil voting, harm reduction voting, applying pressure on left-leaning candidates to push their positions even further to the left, etc. Now, I don't hold a lot of faith that something like that is possible without other things. So I feel like Vosh is almost in the same boat as me. But when it comes down to the way our argument's presented, he has a plan, I don't. Okay? And that doesn't engender a whole lot of positivity from people. I didn't have a bullet point plan that society automatically turns to fascism. I mean, I don't think he argued in bad faith, and neither did I. And, I'm being honest in saying that, when it came to that, he kind of had me on the ropes because that is a big glaring gap in my ideology. And I want to try and learn for this and maybe even prepare for a future talk with Vosh by running by you guys some of my ideas for a plan, or at least the first steps of a plan that might be something that could lead to that resource-based, post-scarcity, globalist world that I preach. And I've got a pretty good idea where to start. And that's what we're going to talk about today, at least at the beginning here. And keep in mind, these are preliminary ideas. They're not super well fleshed out. But I think there's more substance to them than you may think on the face of it. And I'd really like us as a group who, most of us probably watched the Vosh interaction. I want us to talk about it in these early stages and run it by you. So that's what we'll do today, for a little while at least. And hopefully the sun stays behind the clouds. Maybe even a little breeze kicks up so that I can stay out here long enough to actually do this, because if it gets real hot and muggy and shit, I'm gonna have to go. I didn't really pimp Highdeology on Vosh's channel, but I think that there's a possibility that, sorry for that, by the way, there's a big ass truck somewhere nearby, clearly. But yeah, I'd be willing to bet that there are a few people that maybe have wandered over from Vosh's channel, followed me because they thought I had some interesting points, and might be here today. So it'll be interesting if those folks are here to hear from them as well. Or if you're a fan of mine who's also a fan of Vosh, you took his side in the argument. So I called this wherever you are, truck, goodbye. If y'all came from Vosh, give us a V. Yeah, I mean, oh, interesting. There's at least one V in the chat, which is cool. V for trans rights, yes indeed. I felt kind of bad because I didn't do the trans rights meme until the very end. I was supposed to say that earlier. The chat really, I wasn't reading his chat for mental health reasons. Anyway, let's get started. No more dithering, no more bullshit. There's a couple hundred people here. It's worthy of talk. So I named this stream labor and solidarity. And solidarity in particular is a word that I want to start talking about because it is a word that the left doesn't use anymore. And it means something different than the current language that we hear coming out of most of the left. We hear a lot about unity in the left, and unity is different from solidarity. And I'm going to try and explain to you why. Unity means that we all have similar ideological positions. So if we're talking about left unity, we all have similar enough ideological positions and goals that we are unified with one another. We set aside some of those differences in order to provide a state on the left where there is unity. And you hear a lot of calls for unity on the left, right? Solidarity is different. Solidarity means that you set aside your ideological and political differences for a commonly beneficial goal. That's solidarity. And it's a very distinct difference. Because solidarity allows us to do something that we've been talking about on the left for a long time. And that is, how do we convince these people that are Trumpers? How do we convince people that are staunchly on the right wing? And right now, the answer is we don't. The answer is we fight them in the electoral process and hope we come out on top of them. Hope our turnout is better than them. Hope our candidate is better than theirs. And I think a lot of us feel like there is no way for us to have solidarity with people who are ideologically opposed to us on social issues or economic issues. People on the right, people who don't like gays, people who are uncharitable to minorities. And, there seems to be kind of this feeling on the left that those people have to be pushed out. We've got to fight those people. We've got to challenge those people and alienate those people, relegate them to this ephemeral right, put them on the right. And when we put somebody on the right, we kind of stop considering their positions, we stop considering their common humanity, and we go, this is our foe on the right. Solidarity allows us to get around that. But in order for solidarity to work, when I'm talking about the current left-right paradigm in the Western world, particularly America, in order for solidarity to work, there has to be a common cause. There has to be something that is common between leftists and rightists. And there is. There really is here in America. That commonality is labor. People on the right have to go to work. People on the left have to go to work. And it's within that space that a true sense of solidarity could start to take shape. Now, let me tell you guys, if this sounds fanciful to you, if this sounds unlikely to you, I don't blame you. But I have proof. I have proof that this works. And not just theoretical proof. I was, I tried to bring this up with Vosh. But by the time it came up, we were kind of in that position of arguing this riding with Biden, Bernie or bust thing. And I was kind of backed into a corner. Because I honestly really don't care whether or not he and his followers or anybody votes for Joe Biden or Donald Trump or Howie Long or whatever. And I feel like I was forced, kind of, not forced by him, but forced by myself and my own lack of ability to pivot into defending a premise that I don't even really believe in. I think people can go vote. And I think that would have healed a large gap between Vosh and I if I had been able to come to that space and explain that properly. That, like, look, I personally am not going to vote. But really, my most important message really isn't don't vote. And so me trying to step between that meme, or not meme, but that position on his channel and the people that follow him and believe in him probably didn't engender a whole lot of support, and it wasn't a great argument. But I really did try and bring up labor unions with Vosh, and he kept trying to bring me back to the point, and I understand he was trying to not allow me to pivot away from the conversation, but I think at that point I needed to pivot. But I wasn't quite ready to. I hadn't given a whole lot of thought. Well, I've been doing a lot of thought since talking with Vosh. And an idea that I've had has crystallized into my head. And we're talking about it today, labor and solidarity. And it's a hard position, and I'm gonna try and explain it to you guys the best I can. And in order to do that, I have to tell you a little bit about my experience with labor unions. I've talked about it here before, but we're gonna go through it briefly for anybody that may be from Vosh's channel, or maybe anybody that just hasn't listened to this before. I was raised in a labor household. Both of my parents were factory workers and part of a strong local union, local number 254, glass molders, pottery, plastics, allied workers. My dad was the president for about 6 years, and I was very privileged as a child to get to witness people deliberating and engaging in direct action as members of a labor union. Now, I grew up in a place where there are a lot of racists. In fact, if I'm honest with you, my parents themselves are racists. Many of the people that they worked with were white racists. Many of the members of the labor union were white racists. But in addition to those white racists, there were black folk, there were brown folk, mestizos of every kind. And when it came to the subject of labor, there was no conflict because of solidarity. Solidarity, in terms of a labor movement, meant setting aside your politics. And see, this is why I think this is such an important idea to discuss. Solidarity is a post-political idea. And right now, step one, if you want to talk about my plan, step one is we've got to get everybody in the same basket, despite these ideological differences. We need a post-political movement in this country. A lot of this isn't going to sit well with a lot of you, because what does that mean? That means that you stand shoulder to shoulder on the line, on a protest line, with a man or a woman who may just make you disgusted with their beliefs. They may be covertly racist. They may be Republicans. They may be Trump fans. They may be MAGA folks. You may just not disagree with them at all, ideologically speaking. But if you are part of an organized labor union, you stand in solidarity with them anyway. Because when you're standing shoulder to shoulder with that man or that woman who holds that position that you don't agree with, you're not there to argue about Trump. You're not there to argue about race mixing or any of the other silly ideas that they may have. You are there to stand in solidarity, in protection of your collective bargaining rights, and in protection of your job and the working conditions. I grew up around this. I watched my parents, who I've already told you are white racists, stand shoulder to shoulder with Mexican, South American, Central American people that they worked with, black people that they worked with, mixed race people that they worked with, in absolute and unquestioned solidarity. Politics were left at home. And I was very lucky to see a number of times the very factory that my parents worked at shut down over a labor dispute. And let me explain to you how that would happen, because I think it's very important, because we're talking tactics here, folks. And I'll try and bring this together for you in a little more crystallized way as we go, but just follow the breadcrumbs for now, okay? Here's what happens at a factory that has a strong union with a strong sense of solidarity, and a union that has connections from the local to a national chapter. So you have the backup of people that don't even know you exist, don't even work in your factory. So here's what happens. I've watched it. I've actually gotten to see personally and have very vivid memories of this entire process. There is a new contract that's being drawn up for laborers at the factory. And some of the things in the contract, nobody's happy for. Now, everybody in the labor union has different ideas for what it is they want to see in that contract and what it is that they want to see changed. So what it starts with is a bunch of really spirited meetings where people of all different walks of life, all colors, all races, all creeds, all economic backgrounds, and all colors are sitting together and arguing, just like we do now, arguing about what is best for this contract. I think it's this. Well, fuck you, man. It gets heated among these people. See, I know I was talking about solidarity earlier, but solidarity doesn't just mean falling in line. It does mean that, but that's not how it works. What happens first is that labor union, the people that work in that factory, get together and in a very messy, very democratic process, air their grievances with the new contract, or air their grievances with the company and how they're being treated by that company. And it's messy and it's contentious. People yell at each other, scream at each other. I've seen fist fights over this. This is a very important time in a labor union. The argument period. And you will see passionate men and passionate women stand up and advocate for positions that you don't hold. And those positions are run through the grist of the mill of the union until, magically, concessions are made and a way forward is decided on. And that's a very important part of labor organization, because it always happens. It may seem like it's not going to happen at first, but eventually, men and women come together, they air their grievances, they talk about this contract and how it needs to be changed, and eventually this beautiful moment happens after all the fighting, after all the fussing, after all the type of shit we do, me and Vosh bickering at each other towards the end of that stream. After all of that, it's action time, because now something has been decided. Now the time for rancor, personal attacks, impassioned speeches against the decision have passed. And now we are in the position of solidarity. We have decided that this company is not coming to the table in the way that we want them to. And we have decided that collectively, as workers in this factory, we're walking out. Now, what happens when that happens? Well, the particular factory that my parents worked out, here's how it would work. The shift that's decided this would shut down all the machines. We don't just leave things running, of course. It's not our intention to burn the factory down yet. Machines are shut down, safety protocols are followed, and then everybody, not just some people, every single person that's on shift leaves all at once. But they don't go home. They leave and they make their way to the entrance of their factory. And they congregate there. And then word starts going out to the other shifts. Of course, there's a day shift. So let's say this happens on day shift. Day shift shuts everything down in the factory and walks out and congregates at the front gates. The reason for this is that you are now establishing that nobody comes into this place. And here's what happens. The day shift stands there. They stand there. They stand there, they might chant, there might be some protest signs, but for the most part, they're there to block the entrance to that factory. And then guess what happens? The swing shift shows up around 3 o'clock. The swing shift shows up, and a lot of them might not have checked their messages. They might not even be aware, okay, that there's a strike going on. But they show up for work, and they see. Today's the day. It's happened. And you know what kicks in? Solidarity. That swing shift, even though they know they risk their livelihood and their paycheck, when they show up, they don't break the line. They don't pass the protest line. They relieve it. The day shift gets to go home, get a bite to eat, get a drink of water, and now the swing shift is standing at the front of the gate. Now, why are they doing that? Why are they standing at the front of a gate? And why is that powerful? Well, and this is something that leftists are going to have to get used to, in my opinion. They're standing at the gate because when this type of thing happens, a company has tactics, a number of tactics in order to bust this collective action up. The most common one is the use of scabs. If you've never heard that terminology, I'm kind of sad because it should be one that everybody that has ever worked a job knows. Scabs are people that are hired temporarily so that the corporation can keep the factory running and starve out the protest. Oh, you guys don't want to work? We'll hire a bunch of scabs. They'll come in and work for less than you were working for. And then you guys can wait as long as you want to come back to the bargaining table, and they starve you out. So the reason that the swing shift and the day shift and the graveyard shift are standing, blocking the entrance to this place, is because when a scab shows up, he or she is not going to be let in. And here's where a lot of people might disagree with me. I'm not an advocate of violence, but in this case, if it escalates to that, if a scab pulls up and you tell them, look, this is a picket line. This is a general strike here at this factory. And what you're doing, see, scabs are always spoken to first and explained. The principles of labor and collective organizing are explained to scabs if they're willing to listen. You're not coming in here. And it's not because we're trying to take bread out of your mouth. We understand you're a temp worker, you're trying to get some work. We're not trying to do that. But you are not going into this factory. You're not working today. Now, a lot of times, once that's been explained to a scab, they turn around and leave. Sometimes they don't. Sometimes they say, fuck you. I work for a temp agency. I was told to come work here. I'm going through. I'm going to work. I'm going to get paid. Your struggle is not my struggle. And it's at that point that solidarity, once again, kicks in. Because ultimately what solidarity means is once that's been decided, once this strike has been decided, once we've decided we're shutting this motherfucker down until the corporation comes to the table, it's not opening. So if that scab tries to break the line, I'm not trying to be a tough guy here, but I've just seen it happen. If he tries to drive his car through that line, some tire irons come out, and his nice little car or truck that he drove gets busted the fuck up. I've seen it happen. I watched a scab's little white pickup, a scab that refused to turn around and leave the picket line or join it, that was determined to I'm gonna inch my car closer and closer to this line, and eventually these people are gonna get out of my way and I'm gonna go get paid. He didn't get paid that day. He got his ass beat. He got his car fucked up. And when he got out of the car to try and stop those people, he got his ass beat. Now, he wasn't killed. He wasn't hurt to a point where he'd never fucking heal. But that scab did not work that day. He went home nursing a headache and a fat lip and a car with a bunch of dents in the hood because people smashed up his fucking car. And guess what? The next scab that was in line behind him, that was trying to pull in, didn't need as much convincing. In fact, he didn't need any at all. As soon as that guy was picked up by the people on the line and dusted off and put back in his car, and he flipped a bitch and left, guess what happened to the rest of the scabs that were lined up to try and break the line? One by one, U-turns started being flipped, and they started making their way out from the front of the factory. What factories? In this case, I'm talking about a glass factory in Madera, California that my parents worked at. We're talking about direct action that I actually took part in. I was present for. So now you've starved the company. So now that you've taken the company's tactic of trying to starve you out by hiring temp workers, and now you've started starving the company because that machinery's not running. And when you're talking about a factory, every minute that machine is not, the machinery of that factory is not running, that's profit going right in the toilet. So you've got them by the balls at this point. Now, I know a lot of you might ask, what happens if shit gets rowdy and the cops get called and then the cops show up to break up your protest and break the line and let the scabs in? It's a fair question. So let me try and explain to you what happens if that happens. And this is really where solidarity kicks in yet again. You're gonna hear that word a lot from me, not only today, but in the future. It is a word that I intend to try and bring back into the leftist sphere as a topic of conversation. The cops show up. Now your protest is outnumbered. Now you're outgunned. And now your line is going to be broken. Now you may think, oh, defeat. But no, the cops showing up is just a next step. So the cops come, they break up the protest, and scabs enter the factory. And the scabs are now working. You failed, right? No. Solidarity. Solidarity. What solidarity means is that people that don't even work in your industry get word, right? Get word that a group of people at a factory, unionized factory, collectively bargaining on their contract, has been busted up by the police, and scabs have been let into the factory to work. Guess what happens? Anybody want to throw up a theory in chat as to what the next step is here? More come. Reinforcements, that's exactly right. Now, all of the sudden, 1, 2, 3 days later, instead of there being 4,000 or 5,000 people protesting at the front of the factory in solidarity, now there are people from industries that aren't even connected start showing up. And that 4,000 people, max, becomes 10,000 people. And that 10,000 people becomes 20. And now we have a different idea happening, right? I participated in this kind of action. My parents were glassware workers. They were members of a local glass molder and pottery molder union. I spent weeks camped out in front of a casino in Las Vegas. The corporate ownership of that casino wanted to tear it down and build a new one, and all the people that worked there were going to lose their jobs. They were not being given a guarantee of rehiring once the new casino went up. And so people from all over the country, glass workers, cops, teachers, factory workers of all stripes, unionized people in solidarity, showed up to Vegas and got those concessions. We wouldn't allow the demo people to come and tear it down. We blocked them. We blocked the construction and demolition people that were there to tear it down. And our message was, until you meet our demands, until you come to the table and make some concessions and agree to hire these people back, these union people back that we stand in solidarity with, you're not opening your fucking casino. You're not even tearing down the old one. And after a couple of weeks of holding up their capitalistic ideas, guess what happened? They came to the table. And guess what concession they made? The concession to rehire all of the previous employees as new employees in the new casino. And the beat went on. Now, I want to keep you guys reminded of something as I tell this story. Standing on that line in Las Vegas were Republicans, Democrats, racists, and non-racists, black, white, Asian people, Mexican people, Hispanic people, mestizos, first-generation immigrants, second-generation immigrants, and every last one of them had a different political opinion. Man to man, woman to woman, if you went down that line and went, what are your politics? You would have heard everything under the sun, but these people were post-political. They stood together. Despite that, they agreed for now, at this part in the struggle, we set aside our ideological distances and we focus on solidarity. That's how this works. That's how we take the power. It's an escalating response, and it requires organization on a mass level. So, to bring it all full circle, to answer a question that I didn't really answer very well when Vosh posed it to me, what is your plan? Well, I don't know the whole plan, but here's step one. A new national labor movement that encompasses everything. Customer service fast food workers, Amazon warehouse fulfillment workers, warehouse workers, factory workers, bus drivers, truck drivers, cops, teachers, lawyers, whatever. And then the establishment of strong locals and the establishment of solidarity, not based on ideological purity, but based on common human collective bargaining. This, guys, this is the answer to all the big questions. How do we deal with race? How do you take a racist and convince him not to be racist? Take that racist man and let him stand in solidarity with his brother in labor for 6 months in front of a factory and go hungry and swelter in the heat together. See how racist that guy really feels at the end of that. He might remain it. He might remain a racist, but at least he's being challenged. At least his narrative of these people are lesser than us is being challenged in a positive way. Collective bargaining, collective action, and solidarity. Guys, this is step one, and it's a tough step, but this is direct action. This is direct action. This is something that could be done, and it requires the right kind of voices, positioned in the right ways, because this is an argument you can make to anybody. It doesn't matter where you stand. Workers are getting fucked. I don't care if you're Republican. I don't care if you're Democrat, Independent, vote Green. If you're a worker, you're getting boned. That's a commonality. And if we don't grab that and bring these people into the fold and be willing to work with people who we find reprehensible, racists, neo-Nazis maybe even, as long as they are willing to stand on the line shoulder to shoulder in solidarity, we're making progress. We're taking the power back from these companies. We used to have that power. Unions used to be incredibly strong in this country. And they were undermined and weakened because of complacency, because solidarity failed. Ronald Reagan was allowed to rape labor unions. Solidarity failed. See, what should have happened should have been exactly what I talked about before. Reagan signs this new bill, delegitimizing unions or stripping some union power. The union at that point should have General strike. Everybody leave. Stand in front of your places of business and stop scabs. We'll send people to help if we can. Bring it to a halt. Guess who's coming to the table? The government. The corporations. That is one thing that's been forgotten in this country. When I hear leftists or people on the right talk about electoral politics, I hear about how we gotta beat them. We gotta beat them. We gotta beat these people, but they never do. This is how you beat them. This is how you win. You take it from them. You make reasonable expectations reality. You go to these people that you work for and you say, hey, unless I'm making X amount of dollars and I've got some medical benefits, I'm not doing this work anymore. My body's falling apart. My children are sick. I need a living wage and I need to be taken care of. And if you're not willing to provide that to me, guess whose glass bottle factory isn't churning out beer and wine bottles for the foreseeable future? Guess who gets to watch all that profit get eaten? Guess who's gonna miss all those shipments? You've got contracts open right now with wineries. We've got wine. We need bottles. They're not coming. That shipment of wine bottles is not coming till you come to the table and make some concessions for the people that make them. Now you extrapolate that out to all goods and services and you start to see the power of what I'm talking about. Their money's going in the trash every day and we're the cause. They have to come through us. Now, make no bones about it, union busting is a real thing and they're not just gonna try scabs. They're gonna try direct violence. They're gonna use the police force against us. They're gonna use agent provocateurs and plants to come into our unions and spin false narratives and try and drum up this political nonsense that we've all agreed to set aside in solidarity. They're gonna do everything they can to fight us. But if we stand in what's the word? What's the word I've been fucking harping on all day today? I wanna see it in the fucking chat. I'm dead serious. I wanna see it in the fucking chat. What is the word I've been harping on all day? If we stand together in blank, solidarity, we win. So if you're gonna ask me what's my plan, I don't know the full plan, but that's step number one, solidarity. Human solidarity, worker solidarity, bringing people despite their economic differences, despite their color differences, their racial differences, their sexual orientation, despite their economic status, and despite their rung on the economic ladder and their position in politics, bringing them together for a common cause that we can all agree on. That's how we do it. That's how we take it back. So this is a little preview for you guys because when it comes to my ideology, you guys are going to start hearing me harp about this a lot because there seems to be a lot of people with no answers. And the answers that are being given, quite frankly, I don't think they're good enough. I don't think riding with Biden in the harm reduction vote is good enough. I do think this is good enough. So this is what I'm going to be advocating for from here on out. A new national labor movement in this country with strong locals feeding into a national organization to protect the rights of collective bargaining for every worker. Every worker. And when these companies try and union bust and fire people for trying to set up a union, guess who shows up in solidarity to shut that place down? Starbucks is a good example of a company that is, while they're pretty progressive in terms of what they give their employees, they've fought tooth and nail to keep the people that work for their company from organizing a union. The two are not mutually exclusive, and that's the beauty. I'm glad you asked that. That's the beauty of this. It puts me out of contention with Vosh at all on that subject. You are riding with Biden. You think that that's something that you can do in solidarity with you, brother? Go do it, because we have bigger things on the plate. See, it takes leftists out of competition with one another over petty shit. or ultimately what I feel to be petty shit. It makes it a non-issue. I stand in solidarity with you, brother. If you think that riding with Biden is going to be the harm reduction vote, then by all means do. I myself do not vote, but we're on the line together. And that doesn't matter. How do you bring racists in solidarity against racism? Or is that not a cause to fight for in this post-political system? It is. But my argument is that happens naturally. When you talk about giving people a common goal and a common purpose, racism is challenged automatically by that, because these people are going to be walking the line with black people who they hate, brown people who they deride as lazy. They're going to be talking and working and standing arm in arm with these people as brothers and sisters. If you're telling me that's not going to do more to undo racism over the course of a generation or two than this constant badgering back and forth, then I'm going to call you a liar. See, that's the beauty of this idea, guys. When you start to really think about it, it addresses a number of problems that seem to have no solution. How do we organize people? How do we get past the two-party system? How do we break the barriers down of race and class? How do we find commonality between people? And it's like the answer has been staring us in the face all this time. This is not a new idea. I'm not presenting a fresh idea to you. Our forefathers figured this out and fought for it and bled in the streets for it. And I gotta be honest with you, in order for us to establish what I'm talking about, and if you're gonna be on board with that, you're gonna have to be willing to bleed in the streets too. Now, you may not be a violent person, I'm not. But if you're standing the line and your brothers are fighting off a group of scabs who are trying to break that line, you need to be ready to throw blows. You need to be ready to follow those brothers into combat and to do what you can. And it's not going to matter in that moment whether the dude that is right in front of you is a covert racist or a Republican or a MAGA supporter, because at that point you're there for a common purpose. Commonality is the rule of the day. See, people are saying a national socialist movement, and I've seen communism mentioned, and I've seen socialism mentioned. At this stage, that shit is left at home. These meetings are not about mobilizing communism or socialism. These meetings are about mobilizing human beings in defense of their labor. It's post-political. If we start trying to force the issue as leftists and preach to these people, they're going to walk away. If union meetings, instead of being, how do we in solidarity ensure that our jobs are better? And if it stops being that and it starts being lefties going, socialism is the way, communism, I'm not saying there's not a time for that. But at this stage, if it starts being lefties going, communist, comrade, this, that, and the other thing, if you bring that political poison into this process, it kills it. This is not the stage that happens in. Establishing solidarity is the first step. And if we can't do that, if we can't set aside our political nonsense and our political differences for long enough to do that, then we may as well give it away. We may as well stop. May as well just say, okay, this idea is bad, and move on to a different idea. But what that means is you believe that people can't work together. You believe that people that believe differently cannot come together for a fucking common goal and make an imprint and make an impact. And I disagree. And I disagree not just from some ephemeral fucking theoretical idea that I've got in my head. I've seen it with my own eyes and participate in it. I've watched corporations say, fuck you. We're not extending your health care. Fuck you. We're not giving you better hours. And then I've watched the people that work for those corporations go, yes, you will. And I've watched it happen. I helped it happen. As a little boy, I stood on those lines. And you know what? They'd had to come through me too. I wasn't a badass, but I was on those lines. Come through me. I'm a little boy standing here in solidarity with these people. Come through me and my mom. There are 5,000 of us here today that work at this factory. Bring the cops here and beat us and see how many people show up in 2 days. There'll be 20,000 people standing in front of this factory. 30.
This is how you win. This is how the left stops losing. And you'll notice it has nothing to do with voting for Joe Biden. I don't have to fight with my brothers in solidarity about their choice. I don't even have to ask them. If you believe that the harm reduction vote and solidarity in the labor movement is the best way forward, you get to go do that, and nobody in the labor union is going to tell you any different. It makes these problems non-problems in the space of a labor uprising. This is how we win, folks. This is the answer to the question that I wasn't able to articulate very well on Vosh's show. I tried to go there. You guys heard me bring up labor unions. I was trying to bring the conversation to this point. I just didn't get there. We were too stuck. We were too stuck with one another on this riding for Biden non-confidence vote thing. And I didn't get the chance. And I hadn't really fully fleshed out the idea either. Step 2, okay. Let's talk step 2. Step 2 becomes a little theoretical. But I think that that's natural because we're assuming that step 2 means that we have established, in solidarity with our brothers and sisters, a national labor movement. And we have in large part taken back the reins of this economy by using our labor as a bargaining chip. So we've established this new national labor union. Workers' rights have increased. Poverty has decreased. Step 2. Over the course of that hard-won battle, a lot of people's politics are going to change, just naturally, because they're going to be confronted with things that stand in direct opposition to things they were told to believe. A lot of these people are going to be leftist. A lot of these people are going to be Republicans. A lot of Republicans are going to join this fucking movement. And they're going to come out the other end of it going, you know what? Maybe black folks aren't that bad after all. Maybe Mexican fellas are just as hardworking. There's going to be a lot of that kind of mind changing. So step 2 becomes taking this collective bargaining power that we have and continuing to use it. But in this case, not necessarily just against the factory owners. Now that we've got this critical mass of people that are willing to mobilize in solidarity with one another for a common cause, now we've got a group of people that we can send to Washington, D.C. and shut that down. Now we've got a group of people that we can stand in the National Mall in solidarity with one another in a show of numbers. Can't shoot us all. You can't gas us all. You can't jackboot us all. Now we have a group. Now we have a group of people in solidarity with one another. And we can start the hard work of ideological arguments. And that happens at these union meetings. That's where people, you remember when I told you at the beginning of this, that before we've decided that we're shutting this place down, it's heated. That's where this happens. Now that we've established a baseline solidarity with one another, brother to brother, sister to sister, human to human, then the hard work of ideological battling starts. Then the hard work of who's the enemy, how do we stand in solidarity together, how do we find a bridge to bridge the gap between our ideological positions. And we are way better prepared for that at this point, at this theoretical point in the future than we are now. People are way more ready to listen to people who don't believe the way they do and to make concessions on their positions at this point than they are now. Right now, we don't even listen to one another on the left and right, talking past one another. MAGA, 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 lefty, 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 blah, blah, blah. Hillbilly, retard, right-winger, fascist, blah, 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 blah. Get all those people in the same room together because they're all working people. Those conversations take on a different tone and a different timbre. That's step 2. Step 2 is when things become political. Step 2 is when leftists come out and say, look what we've done with this collective bargaining. Look at the concessions from the owner class that we've got. Here's our argument for a national political movement. Here's our argument for taking this union movement and politicizing it And there will be people on the right that will say, absolutely not, this is terrible. And that hash out process will happen, all the while remaining in solidarity with your brothers and sisters. So while we are hashing this out, if they go and fuck with somebody at a factory or a chain of factories, hey guys, you know that spirited discussion we've been having at union meetings about the best political way forward? Table it. Leave it here in the room because we're going to Las Vegas. There's another company trying to shut down a chain of fucking casinos in Las Vegas. They are not providing collective bargaining. They are not respecting collective bargaining, and they are not providing a parachute for the people that worked and made that casino run. So brothers, sisters, I understand that we disagree very vehemently on this, but it's time to set that aside and stand in solidarity with one another and make sure that our brothers and sisters in Las Vegas or Minnesota or Maine or Hawaii or Alaska or Kansas or California aren't trampled on. This constant collaboration and this constant idea that solidarity hangs over all is going to make political discourse in this country actually productive. It's gonna open the possibility of productive political discourse in this country, and that's how leftists change minds. A lot of people will say, well, we've got all these leftist ideas and we pass them around, but how do you go to a MAGA person? How do you go to a dude in a MAGA hat and an overalls that hates black people and go, you're wrong, without engaging his desire to say, fuck you, you're wrong, and it just goes nowhere? This is the answer to that question, whether you like it or not. You bring those two people together under a banner of solidarity for something they both agree on. And then those conversations, all of a sudden, people are listening to one another rather than talking past one another. People are listening to the argument, not just parroting Glenn Beck talking points, not just parroting Tucker Carlson talking points or Rachel Maddow talking points. They're listening to one another because they have reaffirmed their common humanity. And that's where you can start doing the hard work of convincing these people otherwise. You got your foot in the door now. And leftists can start making the argument for a broader leftist takeover of the government, a revolution. So that's my pitch in a nutshell, in a very early nutshell. Poke holes. I'm listening. What do you think left-leaning white-collar professionals should do to support this movement aside from not buying from the bad actors? Stand in solidarity. If you're a white-collar professional that works for a company that is fucking with its blue-collar employees, then you unionize and you walk out too. You leave your desk job. You stand in solidarity with your brothers and sisters. That's how you fight it. See, this is the answer. We need a unifying cause that is post-political, that will bring the left and the right and all the weird, disparate people that are in between and combinations of the two together under the banner of something we can all agree in. Vosh has said and argued that jobs should be ran as a collective, but he wants the government for, well, this is how we get there. So I'm not necessarily all in on this idea of collective ownership, worker-owned collectives, but I'm not against it either. And see, within the framework of what we're talking about, here's a path for you, Vosh. Here's a path for you, Vosh, and anybody that feels like Vosh that thinks that worker-owned collectives need to happen. Here's a path that it's an actual possibility. Here's how you get there. You start by organizing labor on a national scale. You start by introducing the idea of solidarity to a people that have been torn apart by partisan politics. These companies are masters of manipulators to mass pollute the general thinking of most of us. Look at the During Strange Times ads from company. Yeah. See, this is what I'm talking about, though. Human beings talking face to face with human beings in direct collective action, arm in arm with human beings in solidarity, is powerful. It sounds trite and it sounds like, oh, this is just another fucking dumb idea, but I'm telling you, I've seen it in action, guys. I've watched the wheel be broken, not permanently, but I've watched it grind to a halt. And I've watched concessions be made from people that don't make concessions anymore. I watched I watched members of the business class, the owner class, come to their knees to the worker with concessions. Someone in chat brought up a decent point. In this current time, do you believe people have the capacity for solidarity that they did when you were a kid? Yes. They just need to be reminded of it. You never hear on the left or the right the concept of solidarity ever discussed, ever once. People need to be reintroduced to it, reintroduced to the concept of it, reintroduced to the concept of the possibility of post-political direct action. That not everything has to be elephant versus donkey. Not everything has to be the stupid pageantry. Because let me tell you something. The majority of people, even the people that participate in electoral politics, they're sick of it. They may have different reasons for being sick of it. They're sick of the intransigence of it. They're sick of the seeming cycle of it. They're sick of switching around people, and they're sick of getting their hopes up and having their hopes dashed. That's not a left problem. That's a left-right problem. I'm not presenting this to you as a socialist idea. Now, it may have its roots in socialism and communism, the idea of seizing the means of production. You're not going to hear that rhetoric out of me. This is not the time for that. I'm not presenting this to you as a socialist idea or a communist idea. I'm presenting this to you as an idea for the common working person to come together in solidarity with their brothers and sisters despite political leanings and fight for a common cause. And this is it. This is the only subject on which you're ever even going to make headway on this. It may not be possible. I may have fanciful ideas, but this is it, guys. If you're a leftist and you believe in the advancement of leftism in this country, and you believe in the change that needs to happen in our government and the structures of it, this is it. This is your path. This is something that we should try. Because if we do it, I've seen it work. See, this is not theoretical. I've watched working people, all of them, different political backgrounds, racial backgrounds, sexual orientation, gender makeup, stand in solidarity on a line and break the wheel. I've seen it happen. This is how we do it. We don't do it anymore. We're weak. We're capitulating. And I don't mean to be all like, violence, violence. We're not willing to bust heads anymore. The left has become weak and capitulating. And the way forward is not antagonism. The way forward is solidarity and the willingness to stand on a principle and fight with your life and maybe even give your life for it. Because make no bones about it, these corporations are not going to stop at scabs. They're not going to stop at infiltrators. They're not going to stop at attrition-based tactics where we're just going to starve you out then. They're going to come at you with violence. They're going to send goons, whether those goons are wearing police officer uniforms or not, and you need to be ready to bust some heads, or at least try. 20,000 people can bust some fucking heads, and if they're standing in solidarity, they can sit there and stand a little bit of tear gas. They can throw some of that funk back at the fucking fascists trying to break up their strike. They can win. The left can win. We don't have to be this weak, capitulating, Biden-supporting bunch of do-nothing nobodies anymore. We can win. We got to eat a little humble pie first. We've got to be willing to go post-political for a while. We've got to be willing to set aside these divisive social issues and put something above them for a little while. That doesn't mean you stop work on them. I'm not saying you set aside trans rights. I'm not saying you set aside, your dreams for the future. I'm saying you put something above them. You be willing to subvert yourself. Abortion rights, another one. I'm not saying we walk away from Roe v. Wade or activism to prevent, to preserve it. I'm not saying we walk away from riding with Biden or other similar types of tactics. I'm saying we are willing to put something above it. And that concept is solidarity. That concept is, this is a human being that I'm looking at here, and I may not agree with him, and he may have some reprehensible views. He may think that black people are inferior, but you know what? We're on the line. That's a conversation for another day. Today, we are here in solidarity with this man and every other man and woman standing here. If we're not willing to suck it up and work with these people, we are never going to change their minds. If we're not willing to suck it up and stand shoulder to shoulder with these people on common interests, we are never going to change their minds. We can just relegate ourselves to this endless back and forth talking past one another thing that goes on between the left and the right. You pwned me, I pwned you. Oh, Sticks, Axe, and Hammer, pwned Vosh. Vosh, pwned Sticks, Axe, and Hammer. If that's what you want, disregard everything I'm saying. Disregard the concept of working with these people. And let's keep doing it, and let's see where it gets us. Let's see where squabbling amongst one another in this country, working person to working person, gets us as far as any real revolutionary socialist or communist change that you may believe in. Let's see where it gets us, badgering one another and talking past one another. Reach your arm across that aisle and find something common with that man or that woman that holds that reprehensible position. Become friends with them. Stand in solidarity with them on the line. Beat scabs with them. Refuse to break the line when the cops show up and launch tear gas at you. Help them wipe their faces if they get it bad. And see if their position doesn't change. And yours too. That's my spiel, guys. And I hate to tell it to the people that watch me, but if you don't like it, if it's something that you think is stupid or fanciful, you're really not going to like me for the next 6 or 8 months, because at least this is the new thing that I'm going to be harping on. Because Vosh was right. I cannot rest on my laurels giving people beautiful visions of the possible semi-utopia that we could create as a species that tears down borders and sectarian differences and decides on a common goal. I can't keep people feeding the possibility of that and expect them to join any kind of cause or take any kind of action for it. And I really can't expect to be taken seriously by those people either. I don't agree with Vosh's tactics here. I do not agree that convincing his radicalized leftist audience to vote for Joe Biden is the answer to the question. But you know what? I stand in solidarity with him still. He's on the left. His goals are noble. We share many of them, and I will not stand in his way of that. I will make arguments when they come up. I will defend why I do not participate in the electoral system, but I will not stand in the way of a man like Vosh or his audience from doing what they think is right. Not anymore. I will make my argument. And I will make an argument that I have really thought about and designed to not subvert their argument or the argument of a Republican person besides. I guess my only real question is, how do we stop the erosion of solidarity so we can ensure future generations will be able to hold the line? Well, that's a beautiful question. And the answer to that question is hard because, you know, Vosh and I kind of got into it, and he seemed to kind of like not really like my contention that it was the union's fault that they were destroyed. He wanted to cite these Republican politicians, starting, of course, with Ronald Reagan, and then continuing on that passed legislation that slowly weakened the rights of labor unions. But that's going to happen. That's part of the tactic. What failed in the labor movement and allowed this current dystopian paradigm to take shape was solidarity. See, I described to you what a strike at a single factory looks like. You hit the line, you block the entrance, you beat any scabs that try and break the line, and you starve the company out. This same solidarity is applied to the government. If the government tries to pass a bill weakening the rights of your collective bargaining, then you, as brothers and sisters in solidarity, despite your political leanings, show up in Washington, you shut that motherfucker down. You storm the Capitol building. Each and every person gets 10,000 people and takes them to the office of their congressman, and you refuse to leave until action is taken. See, they work just like a company. And this type of action works just as well politically as it does economically. So there's my answer to that question. How do we keep solidarity together? We don't allow ourselves to get complacent. If this works and we get concessions from company, life is going to be more comfortable. And that's what happened. In the late 70s, early 80s, we reached this point where it's like life started to get comfortable for these union workers because they'd collectively bargained. They had jobs that were manageable. They had paid time off. They had health care. They had workers' rights. They had safety rights. And they got lazy and they got complacent. And the idea of solidarity started to sound like more of an imposition than an act of direct action. Oh, did you guys hear about this strike going on down in SoCal? Yeah, this time I just don't think they need us down there. That's how it happened. This time I just don't think they need us down there. They got a lot of people. I was looking at some pictures. They got quite a few people standing the line down there. We don't need to mobilize and head down to Los Angeles and help these people. Let's just stay here in our lazy boys and stuff. We got lazy. People got concessions. We started to win. And then we reached a point where it's like, okay, there's a level of comfort now. And instead of using that level of comfort to seize more, to continue to organize, we went, all right, I'm a union guy, Yeah, I go to union meetings still and shit, but we really haven't done any direct action in a long time. I haven't walked the line in 10 years, but I'm a union guy, That's how it died. That's what killed unions, not Ronald Reagan. Ronald Reagan was just part of the system that's constantly going to be using tactics against any kind of worker organization like I'm talking about. And we've failed to show up and stop it. We failed to show up and stop it. We failed to march en masse on Washington and shut that motherfucker down until this bill was taken off the president's desk and vetoed. That's how it died. Apathy killed it. And you know what? Now I see that there's this time where apathy is starting to die. People are starting to realize that we got to line up behind somebody. And that's why guys like Vosh and people on the right are getting big talking politics right now. Because people, I think, at the very least, have realized that apathy isn't working. And so there's all these ideas about what we do. And this is mine. What do you think about the idea of adopting the taxation without representation motto, but from the left? The phrase holds true, and if we get patriotic rhetoric, that is bipartisan. Absolutely, I don't dislike the idea. I think it's actually pretty brilliant. I mean, things like that are going to be very important. What's important now is establishing this organization, is really starting to get people that are talking about this to take this idea seriously, because I can't do it alone, guys. I can sit here on Highdeology all day and you can go, I agree, Paul's got the right idea, but I don't got the reach. So what I want to do is talk to guys like Vosh about stuff like this. I really want to introduce this to Vosh. I want to introduce this to guys that are on the left, Kyle Kalinske. I want to talk to Kyle about this. These guys with voices and followings need to hear this, and if they buy it, if they buy my premise, if I do a good job selling this to them, then that's how this gets started. I can't do it. I can't do it alone. On Vosh, your arguments honestly came off a little weak and idealistic, not very practical. You definitely thought really hard about more solutions to these issues since then. I really have. But this idea was already in my head, And I was trying to introduce it in the Vosh conversation, but yeah, I agree. That's not his fault. That's my fault. I was bad at moving the conversation towards this topic. We got stuck in this, well, harm reduction thing. And, you know, honestly, he won that point. Yeah, okay, fine. Go harm reduction vote for Biden. But what next? Then what? Well, his answer to that is, then we can put pressure on these politicians and force concessions out of them. Okay. Look, I don't have a problem with that. I don't know that I necessarily believe that that's going to work, but go forth, brother. In solidarity with you, I will not stand in your way. Go pressure Biden, and I hope you get some concessions from him. I don't want to stand in Vosh's way. I don't think this does. I don't think this idea does. I don't think this idea of labor organization stands in the way of any of those goals. It does not mean that you, when you're not taking part in direct labor action, can't be advocating for trans rights. You can't be advocating for, you know, whatever candidate you feel best represents you or is, you know, best representative of your interests. Like it's not like you're forced to stop doing that. So this is a really great idea because it doesn't exclude Vosh. It doesn't exclude Vosh and the people that listen to him from doing what they do and what they believe in. They don't have to listen to everything that I have to say. That's the point of this. The movement that I'm talking about is post-political for a reason. I agree with harm reduction voting for Biden, but I'm 100% with you that your ideas are not standing in the way of that. Well, I don't think I made a good case for that in Vosh. I feel like a lot of people in Vosh's audience, and probably in our audience too, that tend to lean towards him, felt antagonized by me. Because instead of offering this solution that didn't, you know, I really wasn't ready at that point, I guess, to articulate this solution. And this solution is a solution that doesn't stand in the way of their closely held beliefs. It doesn't stand in the way of Vosh's message of riding with Biden for the harm reduction vote. It doesn't stand in the way of participation in electoral politics for them. It's post-political in that way. Vote for who you want to. Brother, whoever you vote for, that is your choice. I'm still here in solidarity with you. If you voted for Trump in the last election, brother, here I am. I'm locked arms with you, standing in front of this line, and no scab is coming through me, lest they come through YouTube. This does not stand in the way of that. In fact, this facilitates it, in my opinion, because it actually creates an incubative environment. This is another part that I wanted to talk about today, and I'm glad it came up. I'm glad I remembered. Part of part two is we've created now a political incubator. So if we can actually establish this first part, national labor union, national labor movement that starts to get concessions from the owner class again, we take back our power. We use the fact that we've got them by the balls and we squeeze a few times and we get some concessions, things get better for workers here. We've now proven that not only does the union idea work, but we've created an environment to incubate political thought. Now, these radicals from different sides of the political spectrum are all together in the same room, often. And when they're not talking about direct action against their company or direct action against another company that's trampling workers' rights, guess what they're talking about? Politics. And guess whose minds are way more open than they are on Twitter? Because you stood on the line with this guy. You cracked skulls with this dude. And now he's telling you a political position that maybe you don't agree with, but are you more willing to listen to him because you stood in solidarity with him as your brother or sister? I think the answer is yes. I know a little bit about human psychology. I know a little bit about oppositional defiance. And I know how to break it down. The answer is commonality. I'm all ears, guys. That's the basics. You know, and I'm going to flesh this out, and I'm going to get better at talking about this as time goes on, and I'm going to get better at countering arguments against it. But, you know, you may not like it, but this is what you guys are going to be hearing from me. This is it. Here's my solution. Take it or leave it. Poke holes in it. Prove me wrong. I'm willing to believe. I'm willing to, you know, I'm willing to have my mind changed on this. I think it's good. Challenge me. But I want to get this message beyond just me, beyond just this audience. I want to put this message in front of Kyle Kulinski. I want to put this message in front of Vosh. I want to put this message in front of the other leftists and right-wing people on YouTube. At least in this space, I'll go on any show. You know, I'm not even a show goer. I'll go on a right-winger show and have this talk with them. this message, like, that's the best thing we can do, at least in my opinion. Start getting this out. Let's add this to the conversation. Let's bring the concept of solidarity, human solidarity, worker solidarity, back into the conversation on the left. As a content creator, you've agreed to abide by terms of service which nudity violates. If this activity continues, it may result. Oh, that's just a troll. I was like, huh? Excuse me? That's just a trolly troll. I don't quite get that whole example with the beach and house. You're talking about like the far future example that I gave? I'm talking about a world that doesn't, where capital doesn't decide your fate. So the beach and the house analogy, to give it to you in a little better maybe than I did on Vosh's, in a post-scarcity, post-capital world, where you live is not a matter of like having to save up a bunch of money and quit a job and hopefully get a new job somewhere else. You're removed from that yoke. So if you're a passionate person, say you're an engineer, and in this far future globalist society, there's a city that's known for great engineering schools and great engineers. Florence, Italy or something maybe, or what used to be Florence, Italy, is where these types of people largely congregate. And this is your passion as a human being. You want to be an engineer. You want to be an engineer. So you don't have to look at that and go like, man, if I was just in Florence, I could really kick this off. If I was just in Florence, I could really do something about this. I could work with the people and collaborate and really make this passion project that I have, or change how we build things. That becomes not a problem in a post-scarcity, resource-based globalist economy. It becomes just a decision. You say, oh, okay, well, my passion is I want to learn everything I can about being an engineer. Florence has the best engineering schools in the world, has the highest concentration of great engineers. So that's where I'm going, and you just go. You don't worry. What am I going to do when I get there? How am I going to get a job? Where am I going to live? How am I going to eat? You just go, and you take a housing unit, and you start working with the people that you're passionate, that you share a passion with. You start learning. And by the way, there's no price tag on any of it. And see, it seems fanciful, but this is totally possible. Utterly and completely possible. Down the road. If we do things right. America went from being a place where 90% of people knew how to grow their own food to where only 1% could if they had. I say we take that back. Yeah, that too. I mean, I'm not going to stand in the way of that. I may not make that argument as loudly as you will, my friend, but I'm not going to stand in the way of it either. I agree. People need to learn to take care of themselves again. And that's another thing, too, on the left that, it's a conversation that's going to be kind of hard to have. We got to nut up a little bit. We're a bunch of pussies now. The left has become a bunch of pussies. We got to nut up again. And this is part of that. This labor movement that I'm talking about is part of that. We need a left that's willing to bust some heads if that's what needs to happen. I don't glorify violence. I don't relish the idea of it. And it needs to be more effectual than these kind of random acts of violence that organizations like Antifa are perpetrating. That is not engendering a sense of fucking commonality and humanity. Somebody on the right sees that and look at these thugs. Look at these idiots. Look at these violent scumbags on the left. This is divisive, and it's hurting our cause. I'm not talking about that kind of violence. I'm talking about violence and solidarity and protection of your collective bargaining rights. We got to stop being pussies. We got to harden the fuck up with our rhetoric. We got to stop being so capitulating. And we've got to harden the fuck up in general. We got to be willing to hit the streets more. And we really got to be willing to consider ideas like the one that I presented to you guys here today. We've really got to be willing to consider this. Hi, Paul. Do you agree with leftist labor solidarity supporters arming themselves during peaceful protests like the old black? Absolutely. We're like, that's another thing on the left, and you know me and how I feel about guns, but we need to have a conversation. I'm not going to say that we all need to arm ourselves, but I am starting to really heavily lean towards, rhetorically, the idea that the left needs to embrace guns. Not necessarily in the same way that the right seems to have embraced them, but it's time for leftists to get over this gun fear, because I hate to say it, but we might need them. I hate to say it, but we might need them. I hate guns. I don't like guns. I don't like being around them. So this is not an easy position for me to take, and it's not one that I'm totally sold on yet. But it's very early in my mind, and I'm willing to at least put the idea out there. I think it might be time for the left to embrace guns. I think it might be useful. Am I going to get a gun? I'm thinking about it. I'm thinking about, there's a gun store walking distance from me. I'm thinking about going in and getting a shotgun and keeping it for home defense and question mark, question mark, question mark. I'm very comfortable with shotguns. I shot a lot of shotguns. I'm thinking about getting a 12 gauge. Get a Mossberg, yeah, I've heard. I've got actually a couple of gun nut friends that I've been friends with a long time, and I've started talking to them about this, and Mossberg is one of the names that was thrown around to me as the shotgun that I should get. I don't know that I'm going to do it yet, and once again, I'm not giving you this as a fully solidified position in my head. You're looking into my brain and where my brain is going right now, and I'm willing to say I think it might be time for the left to get over this gun fear and start to embrace the idea of gun ownership. I know suicide rates are high because of guns, doofus, but we really can't do any of the things that I'm talking about if we're not willing to fight fire with fire, and they will bring guns. Make no bones about it. This national labor movement, they'll try and kill it in its cradle. They're not even going to let it get established if they can help it. So violence is part of the future if you're willing to go with me on this. I don't want it, but we have to be willing to meet force with force, and we can't do that with flowers and daisies and billy clubs alone. There's going to have to be people with guns. And see, this is another good reason to start a post-political people's movement, because Republicans are already going to have that. If you're talking about a movement that brings laboring Republicans into the fold and doesn't exclude them because it's post-political, you're not cramming leftist ideology down their throat all the time. You're there in solidarity for labor. There's going to be people with guns, and big guns, and lots of them. Yes, responsible gun ownership, obviously. Learn trigger discipline. Don't be a fucking reckless fool with it. And in fact, you know, to be quite frank, I'm not even really fully advocating for this yet. This is a thought that I have that I'm sharing with you guys. And it's not fully formed yet, and it's not really my position yet. But I think it might be time. I'm starting to think it might be time. I used to skeet shoot when I was a kid. I did most of my skeet shooting on a little 10 gauge, but I did a lot of skeet shooting when I was a kid. I'm a pretty decent skeet shooter. Like, I liked it when I was a kid. You can get into shit like that. I don't really foresee myself doing it, but there's a good chance in the next year or so I get a weapon, and there's a good chance in the next year or so you start hearing me calling for leftists to start doing the same, or at least considering it. A 10 gauge. Oh, a 20 gauge. Yeah, sorry about that. A 20 gauge. My bad. You're right. Yeah, a 10 gauge is gigantic. Yeah, no, a little 20 gauge when I was a kid is what I used to shoot ski with. My bad. I'm not a huge gun. It's been a long time since I've been around gun culture and stuff, so I'm a little out of it. I think any union movement that's worth its salt will necessarily be armed as to prevent the easy dispersal of our protests. Yes. Oh, no, absolutely, I agree. which is why I love this idea of it being so post-political, because once again, we've already got this whole group of people who are also laborers. These are all working people that have a lot of fucking guns, man. And if somebody's going to come at them, if you can instill in them a sense of importance that is post-political, like labor and like the protection of their collective bargaining and like the ability to come together and make reasonable demands from their employers, they're going to bring those guns when they're needed. But I do think that the left probably needs to start thinking about taking that into our own hands, because it's going to take a while for this. This is going to be a hard-won idea for a lot of people on the left and the right. There's going to be a lot of opposition to this. To me, it's very exciting to me. But this is going to be an argument that's going to have to be made and made and made and made and made, guys, to people that don't believe in you, that don't believe in what you're talking about. And you're just going to have to do it if you really believe in this. Because if we can get there, we have a chance. We can get there, we have a chance. We can convince people to set aside this political shit, not to completely abandon it. Stay a Republican if you're a Republican at this point in the movement. Stay a leftist if you're a leftist. Stay active in that arena. But let's come together under the banner of something big. Let's reach across the aisle and work with people. If you have any doubt as to the power of solidarity, just look at how many times the cops get away with killing black men. It's the network. Right. Look, dude, you say what you want about it because it's gross, but this whole, good old boys club that the boys in blue have, that's solidarity in action, okay? It shows you the power of solidarity in action. When a cop kills a dude, most cops rally around the cops. They may not feel, personally that those cops did right, but for the most part, they remain in solidarity with those cops. And that's how they do it. And we got way more people. Yes, we do. Yes, we do. And in fact, we need to work with the cops. The cops need to be brought in on this. Police, or most police members in this country, in fact, all I think are members of police officers' unions. They're already unionized. These are people on the right that we think are our foes. Correctional officers' unions, too. I got a whole bunch of family, super right-wing Republicans, all COs, all union. Seems like some people on the right have already embraced this idea of solidarity. Maybe they just need to hear it from us. Right. Convince the cops that we're part of, when they get fucked with, we show up for them. Think about that. Think about this labor movement as you're working one day and you go to your union meeting and you hear about a police office, in some town in the same state you live in where the contract is fucked up and they're trying to defy the police officers union and they're not making concessions. See how those cops feel about crushing your protest when you stood shoulder to shoulder with them in solidarity and helped them collectively bargain and help their jobs be better and more fulfilling for them, help put more food on their family's table. You show up for the cops, show up for the firefighters, show up for the EMTs, all of these people. It's how you break the wheel. That's how you make the change. We're ahead of ourselves in this ideological battle, and we're talking past one another. We need unity first. We need solidarity first. Then the rest of this can happen. Then we've created an environment that can incubate these leftist ideas, and we can start winning the loss here. So anyway, that's what I've got on that subject anyway. I'm willing to keep talking about it. You guys got questions? Shoot me a super chat. I'll try and read it. I know I've probably missed a few. I hate phone streams because there's really no way for me to go and look at all super chats. So probably missed a few. I apologize for that.
Want me to go back and read them?
If you want to scroll back and see if I've missed any, you can read me some, and I'll try and answer these super chats.
Okay, so
My girl, Amelia's gonna help me out. Go as far back as you can, because I really
Yeah.
have only answered a few.
yeah, so Blue Noble, $5. Do you have any doubt as to the power of solidarity? Just look at how many times the cops get away with killing black men. It's the network.
Right. So I read that one, and we just talked about that one.
Benjamin Mitchell, $2. Do you think we're heading for armed conflict?
Do I think we're heading for armed conflict? Not positively. Like, I don't think it's absolutely a necessity at this point, and I don't think it's unavoidable at this point. But yes, I think that there's a good chance that we are heading towards armed conflict.
Chris Kilgore, $5. There was a small BLM protest in my town. KKK showed up to harass them, and the Hicks said they rioted, and it was 100% peaceful.
Right. So just an example of one of these protests being the narrative being challenged by the right, and it turned into a bunch of thugs. Right. So, of course, I'm against that sentiment, and I think that the things that I've talked about today would dampen that sentiment greatly. The idea of solidarity would stop this kind of toxic feedback loop that happens every time there's a protest in this country, where the protesters protest, and then there's a group of people that go, fuck them, they're lawless, they're horrible. I'm talking about uniting people under a banner where we're all protesting. Bringing back an America that petitions its government and the power structure for redress of its grievances. Grievance is a term that you'll hear a lot in union organizing too. When you have a grievance in a union, you bring that before the union for redress of it. It's a very, very American and democratic idea, and I think it can be sold to a broad political spectrum of people.
That's as far as I can go back. So
Okay.
Might have missed some more, but
So I've caught up the best that I can on the super chats. If I missed yours, I apologize. If you send one from here on out, you have a question about this, I'll read it. Of course, I'll read it from the chat. You don't have to donate to get it read. I'll try my best to pick some out of the chat as well. Would this accelerate automation, and if so, would that take a lot of the wind out of the sails of this movement? Well, that's a good question. Yeah, the ultimate goal of this, in my mind, is to accelerate automation. I mean, the ultimate goal of this labor organization is people not having to work at all. I mean, that's the end game. The end game is complete automation of 90% of industries, and a complete change in the paradigm of how a human being lives his life. Because as it stands right now, and I've given you guys this rhetoric before, but please listen again. As it stands right now, when you're born in America, you owe. As a pink little lizard-looking fucking proto-baby that just came out of your mother, you owe. You already owe society. You owe society your labor. And you are expected to be a quote-unquote productive member of that society by taking some job somewhere and working for some company or government entity. And you're expected to do that without complaint, and you're expected to take what you're given. That doesn't work. And I think that that is an idea that we can make arguments for that will appeal to a broad swath of people across the political spectrum. I think that people on the right are ready to hear that, because they've been just as abused as we have when it comes to labor. Make no bones about it. People on the right work hard. The righties that I know that are against leftism, they bust their fucking asses, man. They work hard ass jobs. They're ready to hear this shit. Will there be any currency in your utopia? Absolutely not. I'm for the abolishment of all capital and currency as a form, all forms of trade. And I'm for the replacement of those flawed and competitive paradigms with a resource-based economy that distributes resources equally to people as they are needed. We live on a planet that has more than enough natural resources and space, as long as we take care of it properly and extract them properly, to sustain us for a very long time and put us in the position where we can start looking at being a spacefaring species and shit. That's my ultimate goal. And in order to do that, capital has to be abolished. If capital is abolished, there's nothing to keep you working. So yes, the ultimate goal of this movement is nobody has to work if they don't want to. Now, people still will. This idea that if you have a society like that, it'll just be a bunch of, Wall-E people running around in their fat little floaty chairs and drinking big Slurpees all the time is silly. In fact, I think the opposite will happen. If you free people from the yoke of having to show up to a job that they hate every fucking day and allow them to pursue their passions, there will be a fucking renaissance in this country.
I mean, you can just look at during the lockdown, like people couldn't work and they're still being just
Right.
it's backwards.
Damn, that was a good catch. Almost lit a filter. People have more time to exercise and eat right. Sure they will, but that's just a small part of it. People have more time to organize and think politically. People have more time to pursue their passions. There will not be this economic barrier. If you are a person who is born with the talent for music, there will not be an economic barrier to you going to a place where there are other musical geniuses and learning your craft. If you're a person that has a penchant for numbers, there will not be an economic barrier towards you going to a place where there's industry, where mathematicians are needed and learning your trade. It will no longer be like, well, I wanted to be a fucking scientist, but I just couldn't afford the college, or it just didn't happen. I got caught up in the normal job, had a kid, got the white picket fence, and I just kind of settled into a job. That doesn't have to be the way that we live. People could pursue their passions.
Childcare should be completely subsidized.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, childcare is part of this. In order for people to really do work, there has to be a system for which children can be watched while people do work. We have to keep breeding as a species. If we don't, then, well, that's another political position we can talk about, antinatalism. I'm not an antinatalist. I don't really relish the idea of people popping out kids, but they're going to keep doing it. And so, yeah, of course, yeah. Childcare, 100% free, subsidized, easily attainable. And once again, another area where it'll require people that have a passion for that to work. There are tons of people out there that love children, that love to nourish the minds of children. Well, there'll be daycare workers and educators that'll be needed in this world. Paul, how do you think we should design our workspaces to keep instilling motivation to keep working? See, I don't think that becomes a problem. I think if you free people from the economic yoke, that doesn't become a problem. That happens automatically. Workspaces become places of collaboration and comfort. So I really don't think that requires a whole lot of direct action or thought. I think that if you can establish the paradigm that people don't have to work at a job they hate to make money, that they can pursue their passions, even if those passions don't lead to anything for society. See, that's the thing. What about the people that just want to learn this esoteric stuff that really changes nothing? There's room for those people in this world. And I reject the idea that people that take esoteric degrees don't change things sometimes. They do. But let's say they don't. What does it cost us? What does it cost us to have that man pursue his passion or that woman pursue her passion? Nothing. Let them do it. What if they have no passions? What if they don't? Let them sit around and play video games all day. What does it cost us as a society? Really, nothing. It's so insignificant that people that do literally nothing their whole life. Absolutely, it's so insignificant. And I firmly believe, and I'll back this up with every fiber of my argumentative ability, that would not be your average person. Your average person would not go, oh, thank goodness I live in a post-scarcity world. I don't have to do anything. Let me just check out and get fat and watch fucking Desperate Housewives all day. I reject the idea that would happen. I think for the most part, people would be liberated. Like I said, I think there would be a fucking renaissance, unlike humanity has ever seen, of creative thought and invention and progress for humanity.
And like people saying like, oh, who's going to do the shitty jobs? It's like that's the goal of automation, is to eliminate the need for anyone to pick up trash
Right.
or farm or whatever.
That's a good point. It came up in the chat. Thank you for catching it. Who's going to work the shitty jobs? Nobody. The idea is, within this labor movement that we're talking about, one of the things that we push is automation. See, that was another problem with the labor movement, is that they fought automation as if it was their foe because it meant that they lost their jobs. Well, at a certain point, this labor movement that I'm talking about is going to have to get over that fear. And it will start moving towards, there should be no human being doing this job. There should be no human being doing the job that my mother did. Driving a broken down forklift down a ramp that is not up to spec, that's way too steep, way too high of a grade, into a dark, steamy basement to move around big vats filled with lava in the dark and steam. There should not be a human being doing that. A robot at this point could easily do that. We might not be quite there yet, but we are on the cusp, ladies and gentlemen, of being able to replace most industries with mechanical entities.
Including lawyers and doctors.
Lawyers, doctors are not exempt from this. You know, AI development is going to allow you to get better legal advice from a machine than you would get from a fucking public defender. Lawyers, doctors, truck drivers, these kind of capitalistic industries that are so staple are going to disappear. And a lot of people go like, well, then what will people do? And the answer to that question to me is painfully obvious. They'll do things that are actually creative. They'll invent better ways of automating things. They will do things that machines can't do. They'll engage in the more human arts. Acting will become a thing. The arts will become a thing. Music will become a thing again that's pursued professionally and seriously by people.
Green space architecture. Actually, like, working on saving animals and stuff. A lot of people are passionate about that, but don't have the time or resources.
Right. Well, there you go. We need replicators. Yes, we do, and we can have them. I genuinely believe we can have them. What would the reward be for working? What would incentivize people for work over not working? I'm just playing devil's advocate here. The work itself is incentive. When you're allowed to pursue your passions, and I'm very lucky that at various times in my life, including this current period of my life, I'm a very fortunate person because I get to work a job in which I pursue at least part of my passion. Now, my passions are a little broader than what I'm able to present to you guys on Deep Fat Fried, but they all, my real genuine passion is performance. And I'm a very lucky man because I get to do that and I get to get paid for it. Now, I have to jump through hoops that I don't necessarily like. My job sucks sometimes, but ultimately I get to pursue my passion. And if I wasn't getting paid for this, as long as my basic needs were taken care of, I'd still be here doing it. So that should answer your question. Passion itself is its own motivator. When people are freed from the yoke of having to work a shitty retail job to pay their bills and allowed to pursue their passions, the passion and the work itself is that's its own motivator for those types of people. Some people won't be motivated. There will be people that do little to nothing with their lives. There's plenty of room for those people on the planet. They too will benefit from the work of others. And I have no problem with that. Most people are not there yet, but I think a case can be made if we can change the way that people look at work and look at labor and look at the value of their labor and their time. Like, if you legit had no bills and all that time was spent at work, was at home, people could take up all sorts of hobbies and interests, explore themselves. Yeah, if there's no economic barrier to education, people could, you know, like a lot of times right now, the way things are set up, you turn 18 and you're expected to know what you want to do with your life. Turn 18, you graduate high school, now you're going to college, you're pursuing what you're going to do with your whole life. Fucking, I didn't know what I wanted to do with my life at 18. I still don't, and I'm 40. I was never really put in a position where I was allowed to fully pursue my passion. What kind of a different person would I be if I had been allowed that? If I hadn't have had to work at Starbucks or a grinding job at the district office that took up 90% of my fucking energy and time. If I was freed from that, what would I have done? What would I have become? What would you have become? What would that person that you see walking down the street that you don't really think about ever, or that you might make assumptions about, oh, there goes a chud, what would that person have become? That guy with the MAGA hat on his head. If he wasn't forced into economic slavery from an early age and born into a culture that extols the virtues of that, what would he have become? Would he be wearing a MAGA hat? Would he be trying to oppress people of different colors and different economic classes? I really don't think so. Maybe I'm a little too optimistic on that point, but I really don't think so. Not for most of them. I have one more of these. Yep, I'm gonna have one more of these, and then my battery is gonna run out. So, last call for alcohol. I'm at about 15%. That gives me 30 minutes or so max. Chain smoking indeed, man.
You did it worse yesterday.
That is true.
You went through a pack in
I
3 hours.
I know. I really got to get back on the vape, but look, dude. Let's not go there. I don't need a cigarette fucking lecture now.
I'm not lecturing.
No,
you,
I know you're not.
too.
I know you're not, but I'm afraid that what you're saying is going to cause them to start lecturing me, and I just don't need it. I'm a grown ass man. I know I shouldn't be. I know I shouldn't be smoking.
And the main thing is just you haven't been able to go to your vape shop since the quarantine started.
Look at all the bums do nothing right now and just live off welfare. You think it's going to get better if you start giving everybody free money for rent, etc. First of all, I think that your classification of all people who are on public assistance as bums is just reductive and silly. I've known a lot of people that are on welfare, and a lot of those people were hardworking and didn't want to be there. And we're very, very grateful and very, very humble that there was a system in place that allowed a stopgap between jobs for them. So I think your characterization of people that are currently on welfare is all 100% lazy and just living off the system is, quite frankly, kind of insulting. That said, sure, there are people that just live on the dole. What do we do with those people? Let them live on the dole. Those people, by the way, they live on the dole, but they don't have access to any of the things that I'm talking about. They still can't go to school. They still can't better themselves. They still can't move out of the ghettoized areas that they live in and move to a place where there's more opportunity for them. They are still stripped of those. So if you think that an analog to what I'm talking about is the way that we throw money at poor people here and give them just enough to get by on, I guess you haven't been listening to me.
The way public assistance works is you're literally not allowed to accumulate wealth. Your Social Security's cut off if you have like more than $3,000. So it's like you're almost incentivized not to work, because if you start working too much, then you get cut off, and there's no
people on public assistance have been demonized for far too long in this fucking country. They are not lazy and shiftless people by and large. They are people that need help, and we shouldn't demonize them. And we definitely shouldn't look at public assistance as it exists, especially in America, as an analog to the post-capitalist society that I'm talking about. I'm not talking about just sprinkling enough money on people so that they can live, but giving them nothing else and letting them fester and rot in ghettos and generationally rely on welfare. I'm talking about freeing them from those worries and allowing them to pursue those passions. What would those people that you're talking about, those bums on welfare, be doing if college was free, if childcare was free, if healthcare was free, and they were able to pursue their passions? I guarantee you some of them would be kicked back, drinking beer and watching TV. I got no problem with that. But a lot of those people, a lot of those quote-unquote bums, as you labeled them, would be out doing amazing things with their time, learning amazing things and contributing to society for the sheer joy of it.
I mean, there's some people too that like they're good workers, but they can only do it so many hours at a time. So like where there's no pressure to work 40 hours a week, if you could just do like a couple hours a week,
right,
it'd still be helpful.
Absolutely. So hope that answers your question. Our country's public assistance is a half measure, only offer food stamps, disability, and rent assistance. Public assistance should include healthcare and education. We should get rid of the idea of public assistance and just establish a baseline UBI. That's step one. And I mean, that's a really good first step towards a post-capitalist economy. But a genuine UBI that frees people from economic worry would be a good step into liberating people. But we got to go farther than that. Education has to be free. Freedom of travel has to be accessible. People have to be able to move around and be with the like minds that they need to be with in order to learn their craft and create great things. So UBI is a good step, but it needs to be more than that. It needs to come with more than that.
I'm saying, like, if college is free, then they should have good grades and high IQ. And it's like, college isn't the end all be all. Some people, they're pressured into going to college because that's what they're told they have to do to make enough money
Right.
to survive.
College is not for everybody. There will be people, you know, in this hypothetical society I'm talking about that never go to college. That's just not what they pursue.
Or they try it for a little bit.
It's not for them.
Yeah. So the sunk
And
cost
there's room.
fallacy, then
Right. They don't have to be in that place where it's like, I'm fucking 3 semesters in and this is not for me, but I've already put in all this money, so I may as well put in the rest of the money. That just doesn't exist anymore. You go to school, you find like-minded people, you find a subject that interests you, and if you get through it and you decide, you know what, this is not for me, you stop, and there's no economic detriment for that. You can go on to another passion, or you can check out and just kind of kick back for a while. You can take a vacation, whatever it is you want to do. This idea that we all have to be chained to the yoke, I don't buy it, and I don't believe in it.
who pays the teachers? I mean, they're going to be provided for like
Let
everyone else.
I mean, let me tell you something. The teachers, teaching is a passionate profession and should be. The best teachers are teachers that do the job not because they get a paycheck, but because they love watching children grow and blossom and learn things. There are plenty of those types of people working in education right now. They're stomped on because they're underpaid and their unions are weak, and they're not taken care of as laborers and workers, and a lot of them get jaded because of that. But this idea that there wouldn't be people passionate about watching little people grow into big people and helping them along that journey, and that they would need the profit motive to do that, I think is silly.
Yeah, like there's good teachers, but like they literally have to end up working a second or third job just to survive. There's only so much time they
I've
put
known
into it.
I've known teachers like that. The teacher that was probably the most foundational person in my life, Ginger Latimer, my theater teacher, would have done that job for no money, as long as, you know, she had a house to live in and food and shit. She would have worked that job, and still works that job, by the way. She was my teacher. She's still there, changing the minds and hearts and invigorating the lives of young people. And she would do that shit for no money, guaranteed. As long as she had a house or a place she could stay and a car she could get back and forth. That's all she cares about. And I knew a lot of teachers like that. So I don't buy this idea that, oh, well, who's going to pay the teachers? Nobody. Nobody. The teachers won't need to be paid. There will be passionate people taking care of your children's education, and they'll do it for the love of doing it.
Beyond that too, like making education free, like having all the resources, all the textbooks, all the academic papers accessible to everyone. Some people would learn better that way than...
Yep. So, with that being said, we're getting down to the nitty-gritty on battery and the last cigarette. So I hope you guys have enjoyed. If there's any last-minute questions or things you want to hear me talk about, now is the time to get it out there, because we about to be done, folks. For now, we about to be done. Do you think union representatives is also a part of the problem? Union workers decided to let representatives do their job for them and got lazy. That's all part of solidarity, man. Look, yeah, union malfeasance happened. Unions in the past had close ties to the mafia and organized crime. I don't necessarily have a problem with that. If the mafia is willing to help put food on my table or stand a line with me or beat up a scab, I'm willing to work with the mafia. But this idea of corruption in unions, it's a solidarity problem. When that happens, it has to be stamped out immediately. People, if you've got a union president or a union secretary that's siphoning from the war chest and buying things for themselves or embezzling money or working to undermine the union, that person is treated just like that scab that's trying to break the line. They are removed from that position by the collective. They are not allowed to have a position on that board. Now, their labor is still able to be representative. If they want to join us on the line, they can. But if you want to be a leader in a labor movement, you cannot be corrupt. And that's part of solidarity. And I totally agree. Labor unions started to accept that as a necessary evil or a part of the process. Oh, a little corruption, a little skimming off the top here and there is going to happen, but at least we've still got a labor union. No, those people should have been drubbed out of that union and replaced with people who believed. And that's all part of solidarity. That's once again why solidarity is so important. It's a really great place to end, honestly. really great place to end, because the answer to that is solidarity as well. And with that, I'm going to let you guys go. I've got 10% battery, so yeah, think about this stuff. Leave comments down below. Let me know what you think about this angle that I'm taking. You'll hear a lot more about it from me in the coming days. This is kind of my new thing, so it's my new angle. So let me know what you guys think. Come up with some questions. We'll talk later. We'll talk another time. Yeah, have fun. Bye.